Welcome to another edition of the Big News Roundup. I'm Bill Thomas, and here's what's happening right now. Former President Bill Clinton and his wife Hillary finally agreed to testify before Congress about their longtime relationship with deceased sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Former Vice President Kamala Harris desperately urges her followers to impose significant guardrails on President Trump by collectively voting for Democrats in the upcoming midterm elections. And anti-ICE agitators in Minnesota stooped to an all-time low by mocking American veterans in a controversial video posted on social media. Also, experts are highly skeptical after Communist China unveils plans for a brand new, check this out, flying aircraft carrier. And a legendary rock and roll band loses their founding member and lead singer when he passes away at the age of 83. All this and a bunch more coming up right now on the Big Roundup. We have a great deal to get to today, and we begin with this. In a surprising turn of events, both former President Bill Clinton and his wife, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, have each agreed to travel to Capitol Hill and personally testify before a House committee that's investigating their connection to the late repugnant sex fiend Jeffrey Epstein. According to House Oversight Chairman James Comer, the Clintons have apparently had a complete change of heart regarding their willingness to appear before Congress after repeatedly ignoring subpoenas and kicking the can down the road for about half a year. He says once it became clear that Congress was willing to hold them in criminal contempt for their failure to appear, they finally caved in and are now begrudgingly willing to return to Washington, spill the beans, and give videotaped depositions about everything they knew. And for their part, the Clintons say before actually showing up later this month, they'd like confirmation from the House that they're calling off any contempt proceedings against them. Now, in politics, that's called an insurance policy, and one which you cannot buy from State Farm. They also say that finally making an appearance, they're looking forward to setting a precedent that applies equally to everyone. So, right now, the Justice Department is in the process of releasing millions of pages of documents concerning their criminal investigation of convicted sex offender Epstein, who allegedly committed suicide in a New York City jail cell, and that was back in 2019. However, despite a new law requiring their release, millions of additional pages are still being withheld by authorities who claim they're redacting those documents in order to protect innocent people. In the meantime, Bill Clinton's testimony considered crucial because he's one of the many prominent business leaders and political figures who have been directly linked to Epstein in photos, also birthday cards, and more. Though the Clintons claim they've had nothing to do with Epstein for decades, Comer believes they know a whole lot more than they're letting on. Also argues their appearance before Congress will shed light on Epstein's entire sex trafficking network, reveal how he was able to rope political giants into his schemes, and show how the convicted sex offender was able to get away with his repulsive crimes and for such a long time. Final thought, and this is the News Roundup Lowdown, and here's the way we see it. When the federal government makes that call, tells you to come on down and testify, generally a pretty good idea to make an appearance. State your business, tell them what you know, simply come clean. After all, failure to comply could have possibly scored a prison sentence for not only former President Bill Clinton, but for the other Clinton as well, the one who desperately wanted to be a U.S. president. But I'm thinking about it now. I think she failed twice. Lost her first bid for the White House in 2008. I believe Barack Obama got the nomination that time around. Failed again in 2016, but I forgot who she lost to. Oh, yeah, Donald Trump. Now, because bringing that up right now would only be salt on the wound, I'm going to be a stand-up guy. I'm going to say absolutely nothing about it. And so, the Clintons say they've had nothing to do with Epstein for more than 20 years. But if nothing else, you think they would have been a bit more careful along the way about the people they kept company with in the past. In any event, looks like Ma and Pa Clinton, the honest politicians from Arkansas, will finally come clean and testify. So it kind of looks like they'll dodge fines and or time behind bars. To my knowledge, they're both highly responsible and honest at every possible juncture, so I can't imagine either of them being anything other than forthright with their pending testimony. Now, brief note to Oversight Committee, please don't ask Mr. Clinton anything along the lines of, is it your testimony that you've done nothing wrong? He might respond by saying, it depends upon what the meaning of the word is. Editor Pranov the Magnificent. Cut 12, if you would, please.
It depends upon what the meaning of the word is.
Just saying. Switch things up just a bit now. Turn our attention to former Vice President and failed Democratic candidate for President Kamala Harris, who's kind of stirring the pot once again in a vain attempt to keep herself relevant. Newsflash, it's not working. In case you didn't know, Harris is still making the rounds on her seemingly never-ending book tour where she continues to embarrass herself every opportunity she gets. In her latest blunder, she's now warning people that thanks to President Trump, public trust in government is currently disintegrating before our very eyes, and she's urgently pleading with voters to slap a number of guardrails on them in the upcoming midterm elections. Yeah, they're coming up in November. Furthermore, Harris also openly admits that right now her current mental state is in complete turmoil. She's just now figuring that out, saying that she's been feeling a whole bunch of sadness, frustration, and anger lately, and all thanks to what's going on in our country. I suppose she's referring to the mess that her and Grandpa Joe created in the not-too-distant past. In a recent appearance in Virginia, the former vice president pointed to the rising cost of both health care and groceries as justification enough for voters to heed her call, rally at the ballot box, and take definitive action to stop what she calls Trump's reign of terror. In other words, the sky is falling. She also claims that our country definitely needs effective immigration enforcement, just not what we're currently seeing from the Trump administration. She says that despite clear video evidence to the contrary, officials try to completely gaslight people and dismiss what they saw with their own eyes concerning the recent killing of protester Alex Preddy in Minneapolis. Final thought, and this is the news roundup lowdown. This Kamala Harris individual gets a bad rap, and I'm demanding right now, right here and now, that people begin to treat her like the political genius that she is. Editor Pranov, one of those fine, cogent comments from Cackling Kamala, please.
What's at stake in this election? Whoa, it's packed with some stuff. It's packed with some fundamental stuff.
Very well said, Madam Harris. Her most recent gem of a statement is money in the bank. She said that public trust in government is eroding. Eroding. When she said that, she was most likely referring to disgraced Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, the guy in charge of a state which is being investigated right now for $9 billion worth of fraud. I think we've mentioned that guy on this program once or twice in the past. Oh, and just a reminder, this is also the guy whom she chose as her running mate in her failed presidential campaign. Yeah, those two, they wanted to run the whole country. Spot on, Mamala, public trust in government. Yeah, it's eroding. By the way, her insightful claim that the Trump administration is focused on destruction, just brilliant and entirely accurate. And here's a look at the destruction report card. Less than a year in office, President Trump has stopped Iran from destroying Israel, brokered a peace deal between Israel and Hamas, is doing what he can to end Russia's destruction of Ukraine, and has done more to protect our country's southern border in 20 minutes than Kamala Harris ever did as our nation's borders are. Right you are, Cackling Kamala. Midterms are going to be here before you know it. And on the ballot this time around, patriotism, law and order versus fraud, corruption, violence, and chaos. America, choose wisely. We'll change things up just a bit now. Pivot to Minnesota, where unrelenting anti-ICE agitators are sinking to an all-time low in their escalating crusade against federal law enforcement operations. And I'll tell you, what a bunch of dopes. In a disgusting video recently posted to social media, a university professor who calls himself a racial equity educator criticized ICE operations in his state by mocking the U.S. military, U.S. veterans, and even the American flag. I've seen the video. The 11-second video shows a half dozen activists posing in formation and duplicating the iconic moment when 6 U.S. Marines raised the flag on the Japanese island of Iwo Jima during World War II. Making matters worse, instead of using the red, white, and blue, the protesters are seen hoisting the new Minnesota state flag, which looks shockingly similar to the flag of Somalia. The short video then goes on to play a snippet of patriotic-sounding music while that flag waves in the air like a middle finger to every decent, patriotic American who ever sacrificed their lives for our country. So, the professor who initially posted the video teaches courses about indigenous people in his classroom, and the hashtags he used to draw attention to his post include Minnesota Strong, ICE Out, and Solidarity. However, rather than draw additional people to his cause, as he likely hoped, the video apparently has had the complete opposite effect, with commentators calling it offensive, disrespectful, and mockery of both Iwo Jima and the soldiers who died there. Meanwhile, in a bit of a related note, a first-grade teacher in Southern California also coming under fire for a recent video she posted on social media. And in that clip, the teacher apparently shows her displeasure with the Trump administration by turning the American flag upside down, then hanging it in that way in her classroom. And officials in her school district say they're currently reviewing the situation to see if she actually violated any of their policies. Final thoughts, and this is the News Roundup Lowdown. Right off the bat, if you or anyone you know is now or has ever been a member of the United States Armed Forces, thank you for your service. And you made the world a better place, and by all means, a safer place. So you know, in every war or conflict that the U.S. has participated in, we did so to protect people we didn't even know, and always at great cost, both physical and financial, and always in the name of freedom, liberty, security, and a lot more. Over the years, I've met a number of people who served in World War II, Korea, also Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, and more. And many of those people generously shared their experiences with me. The physical agony, the emotional torture they'll live with forever, and scars that will never heal. Now, you won't get rich being a member of our armed forces, but the one thing which all members of the military are wholly deserving of is, in fact, respect, and at all times. For a group of punks pretending to be Marines and disrespecting the American flag, that's as low as you can go. And so you know you're a disgrace to your country and the men and women who died for your right to be ignorant fools. Editor Pranoff, Stars and Stripes, if you would please. Now take a good hard look at the American flag. Think for a half a second about what that flag really means. And if it's that difficult for you to appreciate it, salute it, and be thankful for it, you might be happier in a communist country. Well, speaking of communist countries, turning our attention now to a communist country. A story straight out of Star Wars concerning a modern state-of-the-art weapon which just might be too outrageous and unbelievable to be true. According to reports right now, today, Communist China, they're in the process of developing a gigantic flying aircraft carrier which they claim will revolutionize warfare by allowing them to dominate outer space. Well, not if our Space Force has anything to say about that. They've got quite a bit to say about it. The communist regime calling their integrated air and space defense weapon Heavenly Gates, and it involves an 800-foot-long flying carrier which is capable of releasing dozens of unmanned missile-carrying space fighters from its deck, allowing them to strike anywhere in the atmosphere or even in orbit. So they claim. Experts say that by revealing their system to the entire world, China wants to send a loud and clear theatrical message to everyone regarding their belligerent plans for the future. I say try fixing your electric cars first. You know, the ones that for no reason just suddenly burst into flames? That's a good starting point. However, they also say that right now the plan is a complete load of hogwash. Of course they do. They say it's currently impossible to pull off from a technical standpoint that would cost an absolute fortune as well, and that in the end, it's all likely part of a widespread propaganda push designed to make the West a little bit nervous. Nice try, but I'm not nervous. A couple of additional headlines we're also keeping a very close watch on right here in the News Roundup newsroom. First, in an apparent sign that things are getting dicey for the government in Cuba, a Russian military cargo plane has just been spotted landing at an airfield in Havana. That development occurring only a few days after President Trump declared a national emergency regarding our island neighbor, warning that right now their current government poses an extraordinary threat to U.S. security. I used to like Cuba. Ricky Ricardo, in fact, was from Cuba, if memory is correct. Moving along and taking his concerns over election integrity to an entirely new level, President Trump now calling for Republicans to defy the Constitution and nationalize our country's voting process, saying that, at the very least, the GOP should oversee the ballot boxes in at least 15 states. And in the Bay Area, a mysterious group is now organizing an upcoming march for billionaires in San Francisco in order to show their support for all the entrepreneurs, innovators, and risk takers, which their state is in danger of actually losing due to all their Democrat-led states' current regulations and tax policies. And now a quick gander at a bit of showbiz news. Then we kick things off today with a Hollywood legend who has apparently found one mission that's proving too impossible for him to handle. According to reports, 63-year-old superstar Tom Cruise, he's almost a senior citizen, now in the process of abandoning his nearly $50 million luxurious London apartment, all because he says he no longer feels safe in the exclusive neighborhood, following a string of brazen daylight robberies in the area. There's something kind of off about that guy, about that story. A guy who rides motorcycles off a cliff, jumps out of airplanes, flies helicopters, and was once upon a time seen running and scaling the outside of the world's tallest building in Dubai. That was in Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. I saw that one. You got to think, how dangerous could London be? If it's too dangerous for Ethan Hunt, then I say it's too dangerous for me. I'm staying put. And in a bit of sad news from the world of music, legendary performer Chuck Negron has just passed away at the age of 83. Now, if you're not familiar with his work, Negron is best known as one of the founding members as well as the lead singer for the classic rock band Three Dog Night. And among their well-known hits, you got Joy to the World, Mama Told Me Not to Come, an old-fashioned love song written by one of my favorite songwriters of all time, Paul Williams, and far too many hits to mention right here. At first, you might not recognize that name, Chuck Negron, but he was one of the best of the best. Phenomenal musician, phenomenal vocalist, and you do well to revisit some of those old Three Dog Night songs from way back when. The three guys who made up that band were phenomenal, talented musicians. They were a hit-making machine, and if you're a fan of great music, Three Dog Night, they'll never let you down. And with that, time for us to call it a wrap on the Big News Roundup. Have an awesome day today. We're halfway through the week. Stay safe. And if you haven't done so already, don't forget to hit that subscribe button right there. With that, we're going to dim the lights, fade to black, and we'll see you right back here next time for another episode of the Big News Roundup.